can't be certain that you're always going to win the fight. Let's talk about what happens when you get shot, what really happened. But before we get into the video, I have a quick reminder. We have a gun giveaway going on right now. You can enter for free, but it ends really soon. So just click the link in the description down below to reveal which brand new gun you could win. If you believe what you see on TV and in the movies, getting shot has a binary outcome. You either promptly walk out of the hospital with your arm in a sling, or you get wheeled out under a white sheet. The reality is so much different from that. Every police TV show in recent memory has had at least one episode where the hero gets shot, usually in the shoulder, and walks out of the hospital with his arm in a sling, happily smiling the next day. Television not only illogically compresses the time it takes to catch, try, and imprison a villain into a 42-minute segment, but it also gives the drastically false impression that a gunshot wound is a minor event, like a bee sting, that is rarely fatal to the good guys. Experience proves this wrong. Here's a quick story. Douglas Hurst, 45 years old and newly married, had returned to his home in Teague, Texas, after his house had been burglarized a few days earlier. He was awakened at 1:30 in the morning by the sound of his back door being kicked in. He grabbed a pistol and went to defend his home, encountering 3 young men coming through the door. He yelled, and they shot first, hitting him in the abdomen. He returned fire, killing one and putting the rest in flight. Hurst survived the immediate gunfight, but died as a result of his wounds. A gunshot wound to the arm or leg can be treated with a tourniquet and the blood loss stopped. But bleeding wounds to the head, torso, or abdomen are not so easily obstructed. The abdominal area is full of large blood vessels, including the abdominal aorta and nearly a dozen other veins and arteries. While pressure may reduce the bleeding in this area, it is usually so acutely painful that it doesn't work. Surgery is the only way to stop abdominal bleeding. That requires emergency trauma care, and there are large areas of the country where that service is not available. Teague, Texas has a hospital with 30 beds. Douglas Hurst needed far more than this city's little hospital could offer. In his case, the closest such trauma facility was Baylor Scott and White Hillcrest Medical Center in Waco, and he was transported there from Teague. The delay in getting him to the facility was as unavoidable as it was unfortunate. Hurst died when he was taken off life support. This likely means that the loss of blood was so profound that Hurst suffered brain death even as his heart and lungs worked feverishly to keep him alive. Ironically, it was Hurst's niece who planned the robbery and who was later convicted of his murder. Her boyfriend was the man who died from Hurst's return fire. His niece had recruited 2 other men to work with her boyfriend in the robbery. One of them took a plea deal and was sentenced to 40 years, and one was convicted of murder and was served life. Now, as bad as the physical pain from being shot is, it's often matched by the psychological pain that comes with it. Sometimes in the intensive care unit, a patient who comes through trauma cannot remember anything in the days following the event. The memory, if it returns at all, is nothing but scary flashbacks. In addition to this, he or she has permanent scars that serve as a reminder of what they went through. A survivor often develops a type of post-traumatic stress disorder that causes insomnia, high blood pressure, and a variety of other physical symptoms. None of this is depicted on TV, but every medical professional who has ever treated a gunshot wound knows how a gunshot wound to the leg can months later become a gunshot wound to the brain. Police officers injured by gunfire in the line of duty are frequently unable to return to their jobs either from stress or physical inability. If an officer shot in the torso or arm lacks the arm strength necessary to wrestle a felon to the ground, or worse, lacks the resolve to pull the trigger because of a prior incident, the results can be fatal. Equally important, every time someone pulls the trigger and sends a round into someone else, there is an emotional price to be paid for that action. Television shows do an exceptionally bad job of showing this. Pick any recent TV show and think hard. Has a police officer or other self-defender ever felt bad about having killed someone in self-defense? That's almost never depicted, but is common when a law enforcement officer or even a private citizen has to take a life to save his own or that of another person. This is a wound that can't be seen. It can't be bandaged and can only be treated if the person experiencing it seeks help from competent professionals. The temptation is to believe that television is right and that surviving is all that matters. And at the most basic level of human existence, it is. But a survivor often is plagued by guilt and doubt arising from the first few moments after the encounter and carrying forward for months or even years afterwards. Even when completely justified, someone who pulls the trigger may find himself asking, "What if?" Or more often, if only. So to sum it up, the hard reality of a self-defense shooting is that when it occurs, at least one person, and sometimes two, is going to be hurt. And often someone who is hurt is going to die. The best way to reduce your chances of being hit during a gunfight and to improve your chances of survival if you are hit is through practical training. Want to know when it's legal to draw your gun? Click the video right next to me to reveal a detailed explanation from a former police officer and competitive shooter.
Let me give you a definition of lethal force. Lethal force is any force that would cause death or great bodily harm.